Hey Emmanuel, so I'm really excited to be working with you. But buying a house is basically like a journey. Going out there, I mean, there's a lot of details. So I just wanted to share really briefly before we went out. Basically what my services are. But is that okay by you?
Yeah.
Cool. So just take a couple minutes. But here's my fancy cool iPad. Just wanted to just make a couple bullet points. But there's a few keys in terms of buying a home that you really ought to consider. Whoever you're working with, and hopefully it's me. But basically, it's the three things: are representation, negotiation, and transaction management. So that's where you really need a qualified specialist expert to know how to handle all those elements. So specifically with representation, the one thing that I'm going to be doing with you is considering that fact that I'm looking out for your best interest. So not my best interest, but yours. So it's not just about my commission, getting a fast sale, but really thinking through what it is that you need. And hopefully it won't take that long, but sometimes it does take longer than anticipated. So that's one of the things I'm going to consider. Best price, of course. It's always about getting you the best deal, especially in this market. There's great opportunities out there. So I want to make sure that we get the best price as possible, that it's actually going to be accepted.
Well, I'm really wanting to look at short sales.
Well, and short sales are great, absolutely. There's some good opportunities there as well. But sometimes when we do put in offers, just putting in a lowball offer isn't the best deal if you're not going to get the house. So it's always in context of, hey, what's the best price in terms of actually getting the house and having a successful closing?
All right.
And the final piece is the best term. So it's not always about just the price we got to consider, but the best financing, the timing for that occupancy, all those little details, of course, that make the entire process either a smooth one or quite, very emotionally, bumpy road. So those are three things that I'm going to be looking out for. As far as the negotiation strategy, you really do need to have a professional right now who understands the process and the whole concept of negotiation. And negotiation is the way it's defined as it's a discussion intended to produce an agreement. So I want to make sure that that discussion happens. So the way that I'm going to do that is prepare an offer and acceptance strategy. So not just write up an offer because that's what you feel like writing up and submitting and hoping that something happens, but we really do have to include a market analysis, reasons why we are offering what we're doing. So it's a little bit scientific in terms of the approach, so that the seller and the listing agent are on board with us as far as why we feel that the offer is what it is. That's what we're willing to pay for. So the second part is present the offer in person whenever possible. So I'm a better representative of you and the offer than a piece of paper through a fax machine. A lot of agents, in fact, most agents will just probably fax it in and cross their fingers and hope, it all happens well. A lot of times the listing or selling agent doesn't even know the listing agent whatsoever. I'm at least going to try to meet the listing agent, let them know about you, the offer, the qualifications, as well as then, of course, convey that as well directly to the seller, so that both the listing agent as well as the seller have confidence that, hey, if we're going to do a transaction with us, that it's going to be a much better opportunity for them to actually have a closing rather than some flaky buyer who comes and goes, right? So that's going to be very powerful. So that's one of the things that I do. Finally, negotiate and renegotiate if necessary. There's a lot of different times when I'm going to be negotiating on your behalf. So having those conversations, inspection response, contingencies, closing costs, remedies, there's a lot of different opportunities there for me to be your representative and negotiator. So just wanted to let you know that's the process of my negotiations. Finally, the transaction management. There's a lot of things that's going to happen during the transaction. So myself as the broker, I'm kind of in the center. I need to basically quarterback all the things that are happening with escrow, appraisal, taxes, financing, even getting the keys, all the simple things. But that's basically what's going to make a good quality experience for you. So it's making sure that you have somebody along that line who can handle the transaction management from beginning to end. You need somebody who's very detail oriented or who's, has a team detail oriented to make that whole thing happen for you. So those are the main points that I want to talk about in order for you to have success getting the keys to your new home. So I think that's a very important component to consider. So as a quick recap, starts off with representation. Of course, we got to make sure that the purchase and sales contract is solid, and then I can then negotiate the offer on your behalf. Then they have the home inspection process, the transaction process, loan application and commitment, appraisal, title escrow, transaction management, final week closing, and then of course there's post-closing services, all of which is going to make for a great or not so great experience. So you want to make sure that you have an agent who's specializing in this area, who's really going to make a solid experience for you. Does that sound okay?
That's great.
So in order for us to basically get started, there's one thing I need to ask from you. That's a buyer's agency agreement. And basically what this does, it holds you accountable, holds me accountable for all the obligations I'm sharing with you right now. We work as a team during the entire process. You receive the uncompromising representation that I've just talked about. And so, basically, it's going to start our journey. So this is basically for you. And the reason why I give you a book, it's basically a home buying system. And so this is actually going to be very useful in terms of the overall kind of thought process when you come to, of course, buying a house. So there's a couple of little bits of information here on the inside corner. But first of all, simple thing like highlighter and pen, you want to take notes as far as when you're buying a house and all those little details. I've got extra business cards of mine in here. The reason why I have that is when you're doing open houses, for example, you can go and leave them with a business card. That way they can follow up with me and I can let them know about you or what your interests are. This is kind of the brain sheet right here. So it's the home search criteria. You might think you know what you're interested in buying, but during the process, during the journey, you might actually find that your priorities change, in which case we're going to have an open conversation about whether we're going to wait or we're going to change some of the priorities, right? Because there are some great properties out there, but others we might have to wait, or maybe there's different opportunities outside of the criteria that you initially set.
Does he need to see this part?
Yes,
okay.
Because he's also, I think, potentially going to work on a iPad version of this, right?
Okay.
As potential anyway. So then the journey book continues on. The mortgage company. I recommend a pre-approval letter from Cobalt Mortgage. Of course, I'm your selling agent, so my information is already in there. The home inspector is the person I recommend over here. North Point for title escrow. So we'll fill that along the way. Again, this is a quick recap as far as the things I already shared with you already. These two sheets are important. Reason why is because when we find the best house so far that we've seen, we're going to put it into this top sheet. That way you always have something to compare all the others on. This is the second best, right? So everything has to beat these two out, right? Then that way all the showings that you do, we'll have a little history record. You can of course keep this online, but every time we take a look at properties, I'll give you some sheets, and that way you'll know. Here's the ones that we've seen so far. Then of course you can do your home search. I don't know if you have a particular website that you really like. Do you go to John L. Scott or Windermere or Redfin?
JohnLScott.com.
Cool. All right, that's really good. I put some city, school, neighborhood information. That's always good to consider because we're not just buying a house, right? We're buying the entire community, the home in essence. So the school information, neighborhood information, that would all go in here. I've already included a copy of a purchase and sales contract. That must be your phone.
It's my phone. It's my wife calling.
I really like that ring. There's a table of contents as far as the purchase and sales contract, but I do want you to kind of take a look through that. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But you should know what it is that you're signing before you actually have to sign the documents, when we find that right house. So that's already in here for you. Finally, again, the mortgage information, pre-approval letter, right back here. And often people already have a pre-approval letter. I highly recommend a second one. So my person at Cobalt, they're phenomenal. So having two pre-approval letters is that much more powerful, even the negotiation of submitting the offer. So I do recommend getting a secondary one, and it never hurts. It's always actually a very helpful thing. So again, that buyer's agreement that I talked about, all this says is that, listen, if you're gonna, if you take a look at a property with me, and I've shown it to you, and I've basically helped you, find this home. That you're going to work with me, and hopefully that's the kind of relationship we can have. Because again, I'll commit fully to you, and just ask for some loyalty in return, and that's all that this is acknowledging. Is that all right?
That's great. Where do I sign?
Right there, and we can get off and take a look at some homes. Okay, that's it.